Hello and welcome back to Silver Age Silver Screen, the podcast where we watch, discuss, and review sci-fi, cult, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky films. I'm your co-host, Casey Jarms.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorne.
What we do on this show, what we've done in the past, is sort of going through the classic superhero movies of the late 90s, early 2000s that kind of led to the boom we're having. We've done Iron Man, Spider-Man, X-Men, all great movies. And there's another movie of that era, earlier than Iron Man, about the same time as Spider... Actually, when did this movie came out?
1998.
Oh, so this would have been the first of those four that people pointed... Yeah. There's another film that kind of led to the superhero boom.
Yep.
Not because it was good like the others, but it did influence a bit.
In the 20th century, there were superhero comic book adaptations that were relatively popular. However, at the time, predominantly it was Batman and Superman, because those were the most mainstream popular characters that you could make film adaptations about. I mean, there was the Incredible Hulk TV show, there was some Spider-Man adaptations, but up until this point in 1998, comic book characters were considered sort of child's play. They weren't as popular as like Batman and Superman. However, between 1998 and 2002, there was a string of 4 comic book superhero movies that revolutionized what mainstream audiences thought about comic book movies, including movies that we've reviewed on the podcast, including X-Men, directed by everyone's favorite Bryan Singer. That man deserves to be thrown in prison.
Ooh, yeah, love Bryan Singer. Great guy.
Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and the film that we're reviewing today, and its sequel, but we're not talking about the sequel, we're talking about the original, Blade, starring and produced by Wesley Snipes, the Marvel Comics adaptation of everyone's favorite vampire hunter, Blade, starring Wesley Snipes. Interestingly, he campaigned to have this movie a thing. He is a huge reason why this movie actually exists, why this franchise actually exists. And that's why, in honor of this movie, I'm wearing these sick Oakley shades.
Yes. Wear the sunglasses for the audio podcast. How brilliant. I'm sure our audience is getting so much out of this.
Yeah. This film spawned 2 sequels, and honestly, it inspired this idea among mainstream audiences that there are new comic book characters that aren't necessarily mainstream, like Spider-Man, Superman, and Batman, that can be made into comic book movies. This implemented this idea of these characters that we don't know can be made into compelling and legitimately great films. So, arguably, Blade is responsible for the superhero boom and the superhero craze that we find ourselves in today, where we get films like Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings, The Suicide Squad, and stuff like that. So, this whole superhero craze was started by X-Men, Spider-Man, and Blade. And Blade is what we are reviewing today.
Yeah. And to be fair, I kind of think Blade falls more in the line with superhero movies of the 90s, like Batman and Robin or Steel in terms of quality.
We'll talk about how we feel in terms of quality, but absolutely. In terms of style, this movie is as 90s can get, you know? This movie is very much so a product of the 90s. In terms of quality, we'll get into it, but I would not at all compare this to like Steel. But I do find it interesting how this is one of the first actually legitimately good quality superhero movies starring an African American lead.
Yeah,
Steel's
the first black superhero. This is the first black superhero that's passable.
Yeah.
Although arguable whether or not Blade counts as a superhero.
I think it does.
If this wasn't based on a Marvel character, would you think it was a superhero movie or just a generic action movie, though?
Well, it depends on how you define superhero, because it's a hero who has special abilities. So I probably would, you know?
I don't know.
Which, side note, I don't know if you've seen the trailer. You know the Marvel character Hitmonkey?
I don't, but I assume from the name it's a portamo of Hitman and Monkey.
Yeah.
Is it just a monkey that murders people? I thought that was DC's thing.
It's a Hitman that's a monkey. It's a Marvel character. They're making a Hulu animated series about him. I don't know why I brought that up, but...
Yeah, I don't. Oh, this is going to be a long recording.
No, it won't. Trust me. This film was written by David S. Goyer, released in 1998, starring Wesley Snipes and Stephen Dorff and a couple other people.
It was directed by Stephen Norrington, who's made other great movies since then, like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and nothing since 2003, admittedly. And you may have noticed, oh yeah, David S. Goyer, why do I know that name before? He's written a lot of superhero movies, like Batman Beyond, and no other good superhero movie.
Yeah, he's essentially Scott Buck of the writing world. For those of you who don't know, Scott Buck wrote Iron Fist and Inhumans and Tremors 4.
Oh, actually, just going through his page. He also wrote a bunch of video games.
Scott Buck?
No, David Goyer. Call of Duty games, though.
Point is, it was written by the guy that is basically Hollywood's go-to superhero guy. Mm-hmm. That said, that's not necessarily determination of quality.
Yeah, I mean, Batman Begins is a really well-written movie, but also Man of Steel. He wrote the COD game where you do war crimes for Ronald Reagan. So anyway, enough about who made this movie. Let's talk about the actual movie. It begins in the 60s, and that's kind of the thing, because this isn't a super old movie. It's, 23 years old? But that is old enough that Blade, who's supposed to be a kind of young guy, would be, 55 by now. And that just feels weird.
Yeah.
Like seeing the Blade being born in the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, this movie was made 25 years ago. So, at the time, Blade was a young man.
I know. I understand the passage of time.
I know you do. I'm just clarifying for the audience that Wesley Snipes, people grow old, time passes, and some people commit tax fraud. That is my one Wesley Snipes tax fraud joke for this episode. There will probably, most likely, be more. Just throwing that out.
Then why are you saying it's going to be your only one?
Because I like to confuse audiences. Audiences think I'm going to zig when in reality I'm going to zag, you know?
Whatever. It begins in the 60s where a pregnant woman who has just been attacked by something, I mean, we know it's a vampire movie, so a vampire, a pregnant woman who's just been mauled by a vampire comes into the hospital and dies during childbirth. Cut to now, which is in the same font and size as the actor name, so at first I thought this movie starred a guy named Now. Cut to now, when we have this random fucking douchebag in his 20s, and he's dating a hot girl, and she leads him to this butcher's shop, like a factory farm butcher shop. The place from Rocky, with all the hanging carcasses. Ooh, yeah, we're gonna go kiss in the meat room. I sure hope I'm not gonna get killed. And she leads him back to a secret nightclub where there's a bunch of people dancing, including this one white-haired woman who, teleports because a vampire, who starts dancing with the girlfriend. And there's a guy getting a blowjob on the couch. And then
the sprinklers start raining down.
Yeah.
Which, I'm a red-blooded, straight white American male. I'm horny as fuck. Don't get me wrong, Casey. Point is...
Hey, remember when we did the Snyder Cut and said we would never do another drunk episode?
I'm not too drunk. Point is, I am not so horny to the fact that I would follow a stranger into a meat locker, into a nightclub, inside a meat locker, which there was a point where he was like, hey, what's that? And she goes, don't worry about it. There's a shot where it shows When he says, "What's that?" Those are human bodies for the vampires to feast on.
Yeah,
Like,
don't worry
that's
about it.
red flag number one. Point is, he's in the nightclub, then the sprinklers start raining blood, and the vampires start trying to feast on him.
Yeah.
He crawls away, drenched in blood, up until a man dressed in entirely black leather. That man is Blade, the vampire hunter.
Yeah, and Blade's cool, but I can't think about how cool he is because I'm still stuck thinking about what the fuck were those blood sprinklers? Like, there's two possibilities here, and I don't know what is dumber. That it's animal blood because it's a meat locker, and I guess that means that the vampires can drink animal blood,
Yeah.
but only do humans just for shits and giggles, or they can't drink animal blood, so what's the point of dousing them in animal blood? And the other option, which is even dumber, is that it is human blood. It's human blood that they rain down. Hey, human blood's hard to come by. A whole part of this movie is that it's rare, so the cop has to go back to his car to get it.
Right.
Because they can't just murder hundreds of people without getting noticed. So if that is human blood, you just wasted so much for this stupid party and no one's drinking it. The point is, this is stupid. Everyone here is stupid and deserves to die. Fortunately, Blade. And I gotta say, the best thing about Blade is his introduction. Because he's just so badass. Like, it's simple, but the shades and long coat make him look awesome. And his fight in that awesome opening scene with the shotgun and the katana, it's great.
Yeah.
It's the best part of the movie by far.
Oh, yeah. I do have some funny nitpicks, almost, that you and I talked about. Like, the way these sprinklers spewing blood, they sprinkle on the guy's hand, and it's just this red liquid, and he touches it and tastes it. Like, dude, you realize you're gonna get sick from that, right?
Yeah, this is the 90s, dude. There was a certain event going on in that time.
Right, not to discriminate against anybody who
Well, that's
is a victim of
no, it is not discriminating against AIDS victims to say that you shouldn't drink blood that comes from a sprinkler.
Point is, that's not exactly the smart move. Drink a red liquid, Blade kills a bunch of people. The action is honestly really great. It's very, very, very 90s, as is the CGI. Like, when Blade stabs people with his sword, the sword is silver and lined with essence of garlic. When he stabs the vampires, they, spontaneously combust into skeletons and then into ashes.
Yeah.
Personally, I do prefer the sequel to Blade, Blade 2, directed by Guillermo del Toro. I do prefer that one over this film. But I would like to say one strength that this film does have over the sequel is the way they utilize CGI. Especially in this scene. The first, I'd say, half of this movie, the CGI, it's 90s CGI. It's not good. But the way they utilize it, it's on scene for an instant, and then they cut away from it.
Yeah.
Like, the way they show it, it's like someone is, lying on the ground convulsing as their body turns into a really shitty CGI skeleton. It's noticeable, but they'll immediately cut away from it as soon as you're the way they use CGI is very intelligent.
And fortunately, they keep that intelligence throughout the film. I mean, it's not towards the end, they just linger on a shot of a big pool of blood forming back together very, very fakely. So, Blade kills all the fucking vampires. He slaughters them. It's awesome. And then he reaches the last one. Quinn, this cocky douchebag vampire commander who's in charge of this nightclub. And Blade, being a smart man, doesn't stab him with his sword or shoot him with the gun. He impales him crucifix style to a wall, then sets him on fire. Then some cop shows up, so Blade just leaves without double checking that Quinn is dead. Because we all know that vampires can be killed by fire.
I also noticed that in that scene where he pins Quinn to the wall with a silver stake in the shoulder. he also does this like fist pump move where he goes, that's a pretty lame move for such a cool character. But that's a side note. That's a side note.
Pumping my arm because I just impaled a guy to a wall. I sure hope this fire kills him. It would be a shame if he survives and then kills a bunch of people. Like, the inciting incident of this movie is that Blade is a moron.
Yeah, pretty much.
And, I mean, spoilers, Quinn survives. The cops take his body back to the hospital, where Dr. Karen Jensen, who is a hematologist, a blood doctor, how convenient, and also her ex-boyfriend who does autopsies, I don't remember his name. He's
Curtis, I think?
Yeah, he's a minor character. They're at the hospital doing the autopsy when suddenly this burned vampire comes back to life and just rips Curtis apart, and he bites Vanessa. Then Blade shows up.
I'm coming to finish you off.
Yeah, hold up. So, did he know that the vampire was still alive? Because then, why didn't you kill him in the first place? I mean, the cops were there, but fuck, Blade takes on cops easily. And it would have taken 2 seconds. Like, if he didn't know why was Blade at the hospital? Why didn't he, catch Quinn quicker before he killed people? The opening of this movie is kind of dumb.
Yeah. So, he shows up to fight a badly burned Quinn, which, in fairness, the practical effects on Quinn in this movie are really good. Like, his body is completely burned. That was really well done. So, Blade shows up, but Quinn escapes, and in doing so, he notices that Karen has been bitten, and his Oedipus complex takes over, and his Oedipus complex takes over, and he recalls his mother, and he takes her back to their lair, where he takes her to Abraham, played by Chris Christopherson, musician and actor Chris Christopherson. Abraham injects her with essence of garlic to try and cure her vampirism before it takes full effect.
Essence of garlic. Also, I would like to just go back a second and note, when he realizes that Karen has been bit and, tries to save her, bring her back to Abraham Whistler, the cops, they see him, fighting a vampire, so they just start shooting at him while he's holding this hostage. And B, there's a point where, I gotta get over the street to that building to run away. So Blade just chucks Karen through the window across the street, then jumps after her. Be gentle with her. If the vampirism isn't gonna kill her, the broken neck will. But yeah, Blade and Abraham managed to semi-cure Karen's vampirism. They don't cure it, but they manage to, counteract it to a point where it's gonna be delayed for a few days so she can survive. And anyway, Karen, she fucking wakes up the next day in this strange garage where she's being kept prisoner, and she freaks out and tries to run. But Blade and Whistler stop her, and they explain everything. Vampires are real. They're gonna come and murder you again. You can leave if you want, though. And also, I would like to note, there's a lot of small moments in this movie I just had to write down because they're so stupid. As Whistler is, explaining the shit to Karen, he, fills Blade's car up with gas. By the way, Blade has a cool car in this movie. I don't know enough about cars to say what type of car.
Dodge Charger type thing? Yeah.
Yeah, Dodge Charger. But anyway, Whistler, he fills this up, but, he hits the button to shoot gas out of the nozzle before it's in the gas hole.
I mean, that's cool.
No, but it's...
I don't know if you understand. I don't know if you understand, but that's what's cool. Pressing the button and then putting it in?
No, but it's covered. A, it's a waste of gas. B, you just dumped a bunch of gasoline over Blade's fucking Charger. And then to make it worse, a second later, he lights a cigarette next to this pool of gasoline they just created. You're a fucking moron, Whistler. But yeah, they Karen go home.
Because he doesn't care. He explains to Karen that this world is filled with vampires, which are essentially the mortal enemies of humanity that are responsible for a shit ton of the world's corruption. They own the police, politicians. They're evil. And it's Abraham, Whistler, and Blade's responsibility to get rid of the vampire population on the planet.
And we get a few scenes of, it's like the side plot, I forget the exact order they come, but there are a few scenes where they cut to the main villain of this movie. He's a vampire who wasn't born a vampire, and the other vampires discriminate him because he was bitten to make a vampire, which makes him not a pureblood, unlike those other vampires who presumably somewhere down the line were created by biting, just saying. But yeah, he's this vampire who the other council members discriminate, and he's working on something. He's translating this ancient vampire Bible to summon a vampire blood god. It's all very intelligent, and he just throughout the movie is sending people to try and capture Blade because Blade's destroying his nightclubs, and maybe he has another plan.
I would like to point out that the main villain of this movie is played by Stephen Dorff, who has recently come out against the Marvel Cinematic Universe, claiming that he feels sorry for Scarlett Johansson being contractually obligated to do these Marvel movies, and he feels sorry for her being a part of the MCU. That said, he, as an actor, did Blade, and apart from third season of True Detective, he has done nothing good.
I mean, he was in The Power of One, Black Beat, Space Truckers, The Motel. Okay, yeah, he doesn't have the best track record, but I mean, that's fine. Like, long contracts, those can be shitty.
Point is, the main antagonist of this movie is Deacon Frost, played by a young Stephen Dorff, who, apart from looking gorgeous in this movie, that man is a good-looking man. I wanted to ask you, Casey, what did you think of Deacon Frost as a villain of this movie?
I'm gonna be honest, I was not impressed.
Yeah, no.
Like, I don't think his arc of, like, the other vampires not liking him is fleshed out enough for him to be a deep or relatable character. He is kind of like a snarky wise ass, but nothing he really ever says is funny, and I don't think he really has any good chemistry with Blade.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I did think it was interesting, the choice to make the main antagonist of this movie arguably like a whiny teenager.
Yeah.
Almost.
Deacon Frost in the comics is an elderly southern preacher. And in this, he's a fucking nightclub owner
who has something to prove to the people who are purebloods, you know? I mean, in terms of the acting, I feel like Stephen Dorff did as good of a job as he could have with the source material. But in terms of villainy, Deacon Frost worked for this movie, but I don't think he had as much of an impact as he could have had if he were a more serious, imposing threat, as opposed to just like a whiny kid compared to the rest of the council.
So anyway, Blade warns Karen that the vampires will come for her, and she goes back to her apartment and immediately sees two people with vampire tattoos on their necks. I mean, I get, like, oh, to show vampires that they're property, but if you're going to be doing stealth operations, like, wear a fucking turtleneck, dumbass. She sees a pair of vampires, like, try and follow her back to her apartment, and loses them because she knows they're vampires because they have the vampire tattoos.
Right.
And she goes back to her apartment and she finds a cop there who is just looking into her because, hey, you got kidnapped. We're all looking for you. Also, I'm going to kill you because I'm evil. Blah!
I also find it funny, that shot of he's like, you're dead. And then it cuts to her. And then it cuts back to him. And Blade is just in the background.
Yeah. I like it because before they let her go, Abraham and Blade give her, like, garlic pepper spray to kill vampires. But the cop dude isn't a vampire. She just sprays it in his eyes. But it still takes him out because it's fucking pepper spray in the eyes. Like, garlic in the eyes hurts.
Yeah.
Also, obligatory joke. ACAV. All cops are vampires.
Yep. I agree, to an extent. From there, Blade takes the police officer down. Blade explains that there are some humans who are property of the vampires.
Familiars.
Yeah. They want to be vampires, but they're not quite. They're essentially cuckolds to the vampire elite.
They're Guillermo from What We Do in Shadows.
Yep.
That dude's a cuck.
Yep. And
except for in the latest season where he's finally got a backbone. That's a good show.
Yep. So they interrogate the police officer, and they slam his head onto the trunk of their car multiple times. Now, I just think this scene is funny because at no point does anybody on the sidewalk question, hey, why does this man wearing all leather with a katana on his back, why is he assaulting a police officer? Let me at least ask the question. You know?
Go, people of New York. You do not give a shit. The cop's an asshole, but, you do not even want to find out what's going on. I salute you, New Yorker. Well, fictional New Yorkers.
Blade is about to kill the police officer, but Karen stops him, which allows the police officer to escape. And Blade basically tells her, you need to get your shit together. Realize what's happening.
So after that, Blade and Karen just wait in Blade's car, his very obvious car, which they park right next to the police car, and wait for the cop to come back for it to get the blood he has in the trunk. And the dumbass cop goes back for it. And, he just drives to the big, important vampire base where they're keeping the vampire Bible. This cop's a fucking moron.
Right, yeah. They follow the cop to the nightclub where along the way there's just a vampire sucking on a random woman's neck. And they show up to the nightclub. Blade breaks in and fights a bunch of people. And he finds the, essentially, vampire Bible. While staring at...
Oh, yeah, you almost missed. In the basement of this vampire nightclub, they have a guy, what's his name? Pearl or something?
Pearl.
Yeah, they have a 500-pound morbidly obese vampire who talks in a high-pitched voice, who they torture with, a UV flashlight into opening the door for them. What the fuck was that?
Pearl is a vampire who's the record keeper of the vampire universe. We've seen scenes of the vampire records, which Deacon Frost is trying to decipher. Karen lights him up with a UV light, which Blade is immune to because, as Abraham elaborated on earlier, Blade is a half-blood. He has all the vampire's strengths, but none of their weaknesses.
Yeah, he's a Dampier, which they don't use the word, which is fine, because Dampier is kind of a dumb term.
Yes, but Blade does have the thirst of the vampire, which means he does have the need to drink blood.
Fortunately, he can counteract it with the juice Abraham gives him, his serum. And, the serum's running out, and, soon he'll become a vampire and will have to put himself down.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he can just be a vampire but not drink blood and go out in daylight for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they interrogate Pearl, essentially torture him, and they find the secret room where they find the vampire Bible and are ambushed by Quinn and his crew. Was that the scene where Quinn loses his other hand?
Yeah, that's a bit of a running gag in this movie. When Quinn first fights Blade and gets the vampire, Blade cuts off his arm, but Quinn replaces it with a new one. And then when he fights Blade in the Bible room, Blade cuts off his arm. And then, do his arms get cut off again in the climax? I can't remember.
No.
Aw, that's a shame.
Not in the climax, but something else gets cut off.
Oh, right. Yeah, so anyway, Quinn confronts Blade and tries to capture him because Frost wants him alive for reasons. And he has Blade tied up, actually. He's gonna win. When Abraham shows up, just blows down the wall with an explosion, starts shooting, and they all run out into the subway. That's fucking cool.
Right. Coincidentally, the subterranean lair owned by the vampires that possesses the vampire Bible, coincidentally, it's located in a tunnel that directly connects to the New York subway.
I mean, the subway's below the law of New York.
Very true.
And also, they're fighting like the vampires are trying to corner them as they're right beside the train. And it happened too fast for me to know exactly what happens, but did Abraham get hit by the train? Like, they're all standing next to the train, and then Abraham screams and just gets whooshed away. Like, did he get hit by the fucking train? Like, Blade says, "Don't worry, he can take care of himself." He got hit by a train. He's fine later, but he got hit by a fucking train.
Yeah, I don't know if he got hit by the train, but he fell in between the tracks.
Oh, that's what happened. I was sitting there like, what just happened? Okay, I retract my complaint. Although, I will replace it with a new complaint, how they get away from the vampires. It's great. Blade just sticks his hand out and grabs the end of the train and gets dragged away with it. Which, I mean, he has vampire healing, but I don't think Blade's invincible. I feel like that would have ripped his arm off, and the whiplash would have broken his neck. Like, he can very clearly be injured. He gets injured throughout the movie. How the fuck did that not kill him?
Yeah, how did it not injure Karen?
I know. I mean, Karen at that point is basically Blade because she's slowly turning into a vampire, but the same problems apply. Like, how is she not dead either? So anyway, our trio, they all go back to the garage, and Blade, it's getting to the point where the serum's not working. Karen's turning into a vampire. Frost has a scene where he executes one of the vampire leaders and takes over. It's actually a pretty good scene. It's probably Frost's best scene, where he ties this elderly vampire up at the beach and says, "Have you ever seen a sunrise?" "Oh no, you haven't, because you were born a vampire." "Well, I hope you enjoy this," and just leaves him there to be burned by the dud. That's Frost's coolest moment, I will admit that.
Yes, Frost is wearing SPF a million.
Oh yeah, why don't other vampires do this? They need familiars to go out in the daytime, but Frost can just wear makeup. And he confronts Blade in a park in broad daylight just because he's wearing makeup.
Deacon Frost kills the leader, essentially the CEO of the vampires. And it's a pretty cool practical effect, although it is very dated.
And after that, Blade and Deacon meet in a park where Deacon is holding this little girl hostage as he just talks to Blade about how Blade's a half-breed. He calls Blade an Uncle Tom, okay? Which, you sure that's the term you want to use, bud? I mean, I get what you're meaning, but that has connotations, and Blade's Black. But then again, I guess Deacon was an adult in the 60s. Who knows how old he is? He's probably really fucking racist.
Yeah, probably.
And at the end of that scene, Blade shoots at Deacon, and Deacon dodges some very obviously CG bullets, and then he gets away by chucking this little girl 50 feet through this pane of glass into the middle of a street. That girl is dead. Blade runs and grabs her before a truck hits her. That little girl was already dead, Blade. Deacon killed that child.
Yes, he did.
And while this is going on, while Deacon's meeting with Blade, Deacon's minions go to the garage and they kidnap Karen because, yay, damsel in distress. Everyone loves damsel in distress. That's the movie's biggest problem. It's a very by-the-numbers 90s action movie, and it has all the problems that come with that, the random love interest with no chemistry who becomes a damsel in distress. But also, they bite Whistler. Whistler's the best character. Chris Christopher. He has a dumb name.
Chris Christopherson.
He has a dumb name. I actually do like him as a mentor character. He was created for the movie, actually. Just this old man who found Blade when he was a teenager, starting to get the craving for blood, who took him under his wing, trained him to be a vampire hunter. He's cool. He gets bit by a vampire and then kills himself.
In that scene, I would like to think that Blade would have more of a reaction out of his father figure dying than just... I would like to think he had more of a reaction to that, but Chris Christopherson's Abraham is still alive, and he uses Blade's gun to commit suicide so that he doesn't transform into a vampire.
Yeah. And getting back, the reason why Blade can't really... That's the problem with stoic characters like Blade. They're cool in action scenes. They aren't great for showing emotion. You can have stoic characters that are also really deep and do sometimes show emotion. Blade isn't that.
Yeah, no.
At least he's cool.
Yep, he is very cool.
So, the climax happens. Frost starts preparing for his evil ritual. Blade goes to save Karen. Blade gets captured. He kills a bunch of vampires. It is cool. He shoots them with syringes filled with coagulant that Karen created that make vampires explode for some reason.
Yep.
A, why do you need those? You have reusable silver knives. And B, why does that happen?
Yeah, he turns them into tomatoes and they just explode.
It hasn't aged well, but at least it's kind of a cool kill. I don't know. But yeah, Blade runs in to save Karen. But when he gets to Deacon's room and Deacon opens his bed, which is like a high-tech coffin. It's actually a kind of cool design. Blade's mom is there.
Blade is distracted enough to have Deacon Frost and his goons subdue him and take him prisoner, where Deacon reveals that he was the vampire that bit Blade's mom and is responsible for Blade having all these superpowers and quote-unquote problems with the thirst.
Yeah. Although, that raises another question. Was this all along, because Deacon's prophecy needs a Dampier for some reason, and he created Blade a Dampier, so was that on purpose? Because if it was on purpose, then why did he just abandon Blade for decades?
Right.
If it was just a coincidence, then that's a really big fucking coincidence. Either way, it's kind of dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Deacon, he prepares his ritual, and he puts Blade in this Iron Maiden thing that drains all of Blade's blood. Blade loses 2 gallons worth of blood. How is Blade still living after that? He throws Karen into a pit with her ex-boyfriend, who's still alive but a zombie now, who she kills easily.
Yeah, that was a weird plot development where he explains that sometimes after people who survive a vampire attack, either they turn into vampires, however, a 1 in a million chance they turn into zombies.
Yeah. Also, what was the point of that? Because she kills him instantly and escapes.
Yeah. Plot convenience?
I don't know. But yeah, Deacon, he does his ritual. All of Blade's gallons of blood flow through these... Well, he doesn't even need a lot of blood. He needs 1 drop worth of blood. But it's gotta flow half a mile through these thin tubes. I don't know where the pressure's coming from. And go through all these runes. And then drop on his forehead, which makes lightning strike and go around in a circle of old vampires and then into him. Then the old vampires explode into angel ghosts, skeletons, and fly into Deacon. Then Deacon's eyes turn red because he's vampire god. Nah, the ending of this movie's kind of dumb.
Right, yeah. Deacon Frost's whole plot is he's trying to resurrect the blood god, which is a vampiric god that has essentially been resorted to just myth and legend. That's what Deacon Frost is trying to do, and he uses the remaining 12 members of the Council of Vampires to resurrect them. He begins the ritual, becomes the embodiment of the blood god, and kills the rest of the vampire CEO people.
And as I stated, this brilliant creative transformation, this him becoming a god, it just gives him red eyes.
Yep.
And then we gotta have our hero stop him. So Karen gets to Blade and lets him drink her blood, which turns him into a fully fledged vampire, which I don't know if that would work because she was 90% vampire also.
Yep. Yeah, very true.
But anyway, Blade's back and he goes in and he fights Deacon. Actually,
he fights all of his goons.
Right,
first,
I forget.
Leads to some fucking hilarious action scenes. After drinking Karen's blood, he regains strength and he is confronted by Quinn, which, side note, right when Deacon was explaining his whole mission to Blade, he pulls out his sword and then jokingly pretends to cut off Quinn's arm.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, Quinn is like, I've waited a long time for this. And Blade grabs his silver string and cuts Quinn's head off. Is basically just like, keep waiting, bitch.
Yeah. Does that count as cutting 2 more arms off? Because, I mean, they went off with the rest of the body.
Very true. I think so.
Yeah. So 4 arms. You lost 4 fucking arms, you dumbass.
He kills Quinn immediately. He rips out a guy's larynx and throws it at another guy.
It's so dumb, but it's cool. Karen has her obligatory girl fight with Quinn's girlfriend because, you know...
Why not?
You need to have
Feminism. That. At one point, Blade has one of those circle kick, non-contact things with another vampire before killing that guy.
Yeah.
And then it's Blade versus Deacon. And Deacon is impervious to pain.
Yeah, Blade cuts him in half, and CGI blood reaches out and pulls him back together.
It is bad CGI.
It is bad CGI, but even lamer, Blade just silently, I don't know why he's muted, says, "Oh shit," except he doesn't say it, he mouths it.
Yeah.
Or something, maybe it was like, "Oh fuck," or "Oh no," or "Damn it," I don't know, I can't read lips. The point is, Blade silently curses. But don't worry, Blade has a way to kill Deacon. You see all those syringes full of make vampire explode juice? They're just lying there. I mean, earlier we saw Deacon, when he captured Blade, just chuck them down a 50-foot pit, and they're made of glass, so I'm pretty sure they were fucking shattered. But yeah, they're just sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
And Blade throws a bunch of them like darts at Deacon. And the last one he like throws in the air, then kicks it, and it hits Deacon in the forehead. And he gives a one-liner that's so dumb, I don't even know what the relevance is.
Some motherfucker's always trying to ice skate uphill.
What the fuck are you talking about, Eric? But yeah, Deacon explodes. For a blood god, he was very easy to kill.
Yes. From there, he exits the compound with Karen. And they actually do have a really surprising moment that, like, you would assume in an action movie like this, the hero would kiss the femme fatale at the end. But they don't. They're, like, still friends, and it's colleagues and stuff like that. It's like, that was an interesting and very pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Karen offers to cure Blade because she figured out how to cure vampirism after like 2 days.
Yep. Because she's a hematologist.
Yeah. I guess vampires should have employed them earlier. But Blade's like, I don't need your cure. Because he needs his powers to keep fighting vampires. Which, if he can be a vampire but not succumb to his thirst and start killing people, why did they have to kill Whistler?
Well, just wait until the sequel where it's revealed that Whistler's still alive.
Oh boy.
And then he's killed at the end of that movie. And then wait until Blade Trinity where it's revealed that Whistler is still not dead.
Son of a
It's
bitch.
brought back to life. And then he's killed at the end of that movie.
Also, something I forgot to note, this ancient vampire god temple...
La Magra.
Yeah. Hey, vampires seem to be European, so why does it have... Well, I guess they could be Spaniards. But why is the ancient vampire temple in New York if the vampires are all old European aristocrats?
Very true.
That's kind of dumb. But yeah, then the movie ends. Although, in the original script, let's talk about this for a moment, it wasn't going to end there. The original plan was to pan over and show a certain character who's about to get a solo movie years later. That's right, Michael Morbius, the living vampire, the Spider-Man character, was originally gonna appear in this movie at the end as a sequel hook, so he could be the villain in Blade 2 before Stephen Norrington was fired and replaced by a better director.
Yeah, Michael Morbius was originally, according to the director, going to be the villain of the sequel to this film.
My only knowledge of Morbius comes from, like, the Spider-Man animated series. Isn't he, like, a good guy? Well, like an anti-hero, but, like, still. Would he have been evil in Blade 2? I don't fucking know.
I don't know. Maybe. But I would like to point out the fact that while Blade is tied into the machine that's going to resurrect the Blood God, his mother is totally filling up on him.
Oh, yeah.
Rips off his shirt and then is, like, rubbing her nose along his sexy, gorgeous face. I also like to point out that Deacon Frost has weird, like, I don't want to say out of focus, but, like, weird moments where he's, like, partially off screen. Like, there's a part earlier on where he's, right when he kills the police officer and drinks his blood and throws him into the pool. It cuts to this wide shot of him with Quinn as Quinn's talking with him, and Deacon gives the women he's talking with like a weird like finger gun. Later on, when the 12 board members of the vampire community are being turned into the skeleton demons, he does this weird like and jumps maybe 5 feet. Like, Deacon Frost has some weird out of focus scenes. But I am very proud that at the end of the movie, the hero doesn't kiss the girl.
That's one thing that this movie does that isn't just by the book standard action movie.
Mm-hmm.
One thing.
Yeah.
The only one. Like, here's what I'll say about this movie. Some of how it's shot is very good, and the CG, although it hasn't aged well, was pretty good for 1998. Wesley Snipes, although maybe not the most emotional actor in this movie, he is at least cool and perfectly embodies that character.
Yes.
But the problem is that's kind of where the good things stop. Like, there's a very forced love interest that turns into a damsel in distress. The villain doesn't have a lot going for him. A lot of the lore and world building is just dumb.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is cool. There's another moment I would like to point out. They explain the lore of vampires, how crosses and holy water, that doesn't work. That's not like the movies. But then they explain, like, garlic, silver, and sunlight kill them. You know, so the stuff from the movies doesn't work on vampires, but the other stuff from the movies does work on vampires.
Yeah, like, you can't try and be like, ooh, we're a serious movie. Our vampires don't have those cheesy weaknesses like running water or crosses. They're only weak to wooden stakes and garlic.
Yep.
That's dumb.
Yeah.
And I'd be fine with it being dumb. Like, just fuck it, go all in. Get all the classic vampire dumb shit.
It's like...
Like, vampires inherently, like, people are always like, oh, let's make vampires these edgy, possibly romance interest characters. But no, vampires are inherently kinda cheesy and play into that. They don't want fucking Edward Cullen. I want Count Dracula, who talks like this and counts all the rice. Yeah, ha ha ha.
I also like the fact that the vampires in this movie, they're not, like, strictly speaking vampires. They're essentially gangsters and punk teenagers. Like, that I thought was really
honestly, if they went more into the mafia aspect, that would have been a very interesting angle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this movie is really dumb, but it's a lot of fun to watch. I've seen it multiple times, and I don't know, it's just like comic book enjoyment. That said, it's rather generic comic book enjoyment. Then again, this film like predated the superhero revolution of the 2000s, so, and arguably this was responsible for such. Not alone in and of itself, but it's partially responsible. So I think that the movie needs to be commended for that in and of itself.
Any other thoughts on this film?
I would like to say that Deacon Frost in addition to biting Blade's mom and then turning her into his own personal sex toy, is the most evil fuck you possible to a main protagonist. Yeah, I turned you into the monster you are today. I'm also fucking your mom. I would like to point out that's the biggest fuck you.
Also, if you're gonna have Deacon be just this fucking nightclub fuckboy douchebag, have him be a fucking douchebag. Have him be like, I fucked your mom, Blade. Eat shit.
Yeah, those are my thoughts. I think this movie is fun to watch, but in terms of comic book cinema, I think it's very clearly the beginning step of greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And in many respects, I think has a lot to be desired. That said, I think it's a lot of fun. So if I'm giving a numeric value to it,
which is what we do,
I'm probably going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a fun as hell watch. It's really cool. There's a lot to like about it, but there is a lot of flaws. So for me, a 7 is good.
I give it a 7.5. The action's cool. Wesley Snipes was a really good choice to play Blade, but other than that, it's just a very generic film with a very mediocre script.
Yes. I mean, it led to the superhero renaissance of the late 2000s.
Yeah, but also, did it though? I mean, it's like down here, like it did a little, and then just up there, Spider-Man.
And X-Men.
Yeah.
I think it's a fun movie, and that said, really fucking stupid, and has a lot to be desired.
We'll be back next week, assuming Deacon Frost doesn't fuck all over moms.
Mm-hmm. Also, I would like to shout out on our TikTok followers, clan.tc3. Austin is a big fan of ours. He's done a little bit of promotion for us, and he's a big fan. He follows us, he promotes us. I just like to give a shout out to Austin, clan.tc3. In terms of where you can find our show, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and YouTube at Silver Age Silver Screen, where you can follow us there. We post updates to the show and some other bonus content on there. You can find me on Riley Thorpe on YouTube, where you can check out my short films. My short film, Silence of the Karens, was recently just accepted into a 3rd film festival. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Riley James Thorpe, where I post a lot of content as well as updates to the show. Casey, what about you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at JarmesCasey, JarmesCasey. Be sure to check out Double Elimination, The Machine. It's a book I wrote. It's a superhero thing. I'm not going to read off the full back of the book. Just look it up, and if it sounds interesting, check it out. Also, check out my 3-part video essay series, The Politics of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hey, fun fact, back in July, YouTube corrupted the files when I uploaded them and didn't tell me and didn't notify me, even though I have notifications turned on, that people were commenting, hey, this video is garbled and unwatchable. Hey, that was fucking fun. The good version's out now if you want to actually see it finally. We'll be back next week, assuming we don't get exploded by coagulant. Wait, I already did the we'll be back next week.
You did.
You get 2! We'll be back next week, assuming we don't get exploded by coagulant while Deacon Frost is fucking our mothers. Ugh. As always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And hey, it's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it. Especially not to Blade.